It's clear to me, Joel, and our listeners, I'm sure, that you see CEO selection and leadership depth as a board governance priority. So how can boards, sticking with this theme, how can boards best identify and select CEOs and their executive teams?
Well, the first thing is to select smartly for the board. It's surprising to me. Most people who haven't been inside boardrooms don't understand that how one is selected for an executive post and how one is selected and nominated and then elected for a board is different. The process is different. So selecting board members, having each seat represent some level of skill that combined together, you have a team. Okay. In that way, it's like it's like an executive team. You don't expect your head of operations to be an expert in your CHRO at the same time. Inside of boardrooms, though, while each has a seat, collectively they make decisions. And there is a specific, every board is unique, just like every company is unique. Every board has its own set of politics. There's always there's always what we call an inside group, okay, that's been there a while and talks behind the scenes, and not necessarily openly with the board, with the rest of the board members. So they have their own themes, they have their own uniqueness, and so forth, just like a company, their own culture. And they have, on top of it, they have the theory of small groups, which is you change one board member and the dynamics change. Boards have become smaller too. So people are expected to wear more than one hat, especially with the committee assignments and so forth. Corporations are different, and so in selecting board members, that drives how they view the challenges that their company they're governing, that they're responsible to governing, elected by the shareholders, we're talking public companies, or appointed by the shareholders of its private equity or family. And they must address those issues in an open and candid way. If you're inside of a company and how you're selected usually because there's a job description, and a job description probably looks like a 3-hump camel to most candidates because it's been touched and written and rewritten and X'd out and written over by a number of different people who have different points of view. So sometimes what's on paper in a job description isn't really what they're trying to do. Okay, it fulfills a need. And how many times, Tony, and your listeners would probably say the same, that they look like a job description that was written 5 years ago, because it probably was, and it was moderated a little bit for the current circumstance.
We're a work in progress. I mean, often it looks like it's just not quite clear enough yet.
What happens is they end up using it as a snapshot of what they really want. And I can tell you the vast majority of engagements we're involved in, the vast majority of them, the search final solution is not exactly what's on that paper, not even close. Not even close. So I don't know that I'm really answering your question, but what I'm trying to frame here is the idea that the world is changing. Boards are changing, and they're in flux themselves. Executive leadership is changing because they're in a world where they have to deliver performance, and they're in a world where performance metrics change as conditions change. Okay, imagine you're in the hotel business, or you're in the cruise line business, or you're in the restaurant business during COVID. Who could have predicted that you couldn't open your doors, couldn't get people to work, and you couldn't get folks to come in and purchase whatever it is, a hotel room, a cruise cabin, or even through outside of a drive-through. How do you operate your business? It's completely different. What's the next one going to be? How adaptable are we? How do we know when we're starting to see a crisis? And how do we get together as a management team, or as a board in some cases, to deal with the unthinkable? We haven't thought about it. It's not part of our strategy. So how do we do that? And that's where the holistic piece comes in. And that's what these companies are really looking for, because they don't know what's coming. All they do know is tomorrow's not going to be like today. And if you hire traditionally of what was yesterday, which is, well, Tony has worked, we're a restaurant company, Tony's worked in restaurants all his life. Therefore, and Tony's had these kind of roles, therefore Tony's qualified for our role. If that's all you're looking at, chances are it's a very risky hire. So you have to have that basics, but you got to have much more than that.